So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome everyone to our Dhamma study programs. And today we will continue with the Dhamma group 9 and group 10. So we have come to the week of 14. This week we will be discussing the Dhamma group 9 and group 10 together. As you can see, we have Dhamma group 9 and Dhamma group 10. First, we will be discussing the Dhamma group 9 called Mala or the stains. There are 9 of them. Then the rest gonna be the Dhamma group 10. So I group them together like this. There is something called the 10 wholesome action or kusala kamma, and the 10 unwholesome action or akusala dhamma. And the last one will be discussing the 10 objects. And the last one will be discussing the 10 objects for regular reflection or anusati. Start from the first one today. This is the terms called Mala. This may be new to many of us. Mala is a Pali term translated to stains, impurities, or defilements. In Buddhism, as you may know, the Buddha discovered something more refined. As we know, we have body here, and we have the mind somewhere in the body. And inside the mind, there is something called the viruses of the mind or the mental impurity that's discovered and revealed by the Buddha. There are 3 of them: greed, hatred, and delusion. And our job as a human beings, we need to make sure that we purify all of this mental impurity as much as possible. And if someone can get rid of or uproot all of this completely, that person will achieve the state of arahantship or realize nibbana. And there are many kinds of kilesa out there. Today we're going to learn another group of kilesa called the mala. But in the past, we may familiar with the word hindrances, the 5 hindrances, or the second noble truth talk about tanha. There are 3 kinds of tanha: kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha, mentioned in the second noble truth. Or you may heard about the upakilesa. There are 16 of them. So all of these, they are defilements. And you may wondering, how come there's so many of them? If you look at the primary colors, primary color only have 3 colors, right? Yellow, red, blue. And if we mix them together, we get all kind of color shade like this: yellowish, bluish, brownish, reddish. There are all kind of them. If we track all of them back, they're coming down to these 3 kinds of primary color. Same thing with the defilements. The root of the defilements, there are 3 of them, namely greed, hate, and delusion. And when they mix together, they become a different form of defilements. And today I'm going to give you an example so you have more understanding about the defilements and how they work. In other words, doesn't matter how many defilements out there. If we track them down, they will coming down to one of these 3 kinds of defilements, which are greed, hatred, and delusions. Sometimes they are called the root of the poison trees, stemming from avijja or ignorance, and then become lobha or greed, dosa or anger, moha or delusion. And they go from there. There are many kind of moha, many kind of dosa, many kind of lobha. So we need to be aware of this fact and keep our mind pure as much as possible. So the nature of the mind is supposed to be pure and right, but because there are the mental impurity in the mind, it makes the mind crowded like this. It makes the mind impure. So our job is to maintain the purity state of the mind as much as possible, so we can be at peace and we can be happy. So we get to know the group of defilements called mala. The meaning of mala: you think of the dusty windows. The window is supposed to be clear, supposed to be bright, so we can see through the window and we can see things the way they are. We can see tree, we can see human, we can see car pass by. But if the window is stained with dust, with something, it's become a dirty window, then we cannot see things clearly through that windows. Same thing in human mind. If the mind stained with this kind of viruses or this kind of defilements, which we about to talk about it, 9 of them, so it's kind of hinder us from making progress in our spiritual development. It's blocking us from the right understanding, and it's lessen our happiness because they stain our mind. They make our mind impure. So the defilements that fall into the mala groups, there are 9 of them. First, anger or goda. Second is depreciation. Depreciation, the Pali is called makha. The third is envy or jealousy or itsa. The fourth, stinginess or maccharya. And the fifth, deceptions or maya. The sixth, called boastfulness or sataya. The seventh, false speech or musawada. The number 8 is evil wish or papicha. And number 9 is a wrong understanding or wrong view or michatiti, which we did talk about this in the previous session. And they are the mental impurity. They stain the mind. From the pure and bright mind become the crowded mind. And as you know, pure mind bring happiness, crowded mind bring suffering and problem into life. So let's start from number 1, anger. Anger in this case is called goda. In this picture, you can see the different level of angriness. Start from number 1. When we see something we don't like, we feel I don't like it. The feeling of I don't like it starts from the feeling of I don't like it. And if you still have to face that thing or that situation, the mind become irritated by that situation, by the person, by the voice, by the environments that you are living in that particular moment. When the mind get irritated long enough, it will become angriness. You get angry here. And later on, let's say if the person starts shouting at you, you don't like it. If he still continue to say something bad to you, you become irritated by that behavior of that person. And if he still continue to doing that, you start to get angry. Now the mind become angry. If the situation continue, then the anger transform itself to be something called ill will. Now you start thinking, I'm gonna have to say something bad back to him. Now I'm gonna have to hurt him back. Now there is a thinking of hurting someone back because I don't like what he is doing to me. Let's say if the man is not around, you cannot say something bad to him. He just run away. But you keep hold on that thought, the thought of ill will that, you know what, I'm gonna have to do something back to this person because he's hurting my feelings. By holding that thought, because you cannot do something to the person who do harm to you in that moment, that is called revenge. If you find him down the road sometime in the future, you have an intention to do something bad to that person, either say something bad or harm him in some way. This is the idea of anger or gotha. It starts from little feeling that I don't like it, and then all the way up to I want to hurt that person, I want to harm that person. If you can think of the boiling water, right? When you put the water on the stove, you start to heat it up. At the beginning, the water is still cold, and later on, a few minutes later, it's become a warm water. And if you leave it like that long enough, the water start to boil, and eventually it will become 100% boiling water. And this is the idea of anger. When a person gets angry, he will transform himself from a good man to be an evil man. He can say something bad, he can do something bad because he lost his consciousness or he lack of mindfulness. So the next one is called makha. What is makha? Makha usually translates as detraction or depreciation. The idea of makha is about you depreciate someone's worth or value. That's the idea of makha. The son may look down their parents. The student may look down their teachers. In some culture, student may look at the teacher as just an employee. They have a responsibility to teach, so they don't fully respect their teacher. But most places in the East, we do respect the teacher. We don't look at them as the employee that get paid from the government and teach us in the class. So we respect them more than just the teacher. By having this kind of view, by showing respect, being humble to the teacher, this is how the knowledge or the wisdom gets transmitted from teacher to student. And that's how the student can be prosperous in their study, because the teacher would be happy to teach the student who show respect and be humble when they are in the classroom. There was the story of the Tevatatta, the monk who would like to take charge of the Buddhist community or the Sangha community back then. So he turned himself against the Buddha. He wants to be in charge. So he did try many things to harm the Buddha, or even trying to kill the Buddha himself, because he lack of respect towards his own teacher or the Buddha. So as a good person, we should reflect that there are many people in our life that they love us, they care about us, they take care of us until we become we today. Parents, teachers, friends, boss, relatives, there are many of them. We should not only recognize there are goodness that many people have done to us, we also should find way to repay the gratitude back to those people in any way that we can. And that is the characteristics of a good person that we learned from the first week of the Dhamma group 2, right? About Katanyu and Kataveti. To recognize someone's goodness and to find way to pay gratitude back to those people. The next one is called Issa. Issa or jealousy. This one is easy to understand. When we see someone happy or success in life, we should fully rejoice in their success, right? But the nature of human mind is not like that, because we born with ignorance, we born with delusions. There may be time that your friends get promoted at work, you guys start working together, graduate from the same school, same degree, work in the same company with the similar performance, and all of a sudden your friend get promoted to be the managers. You may be thinking, why not me? That's the jealousy mind. So instead of turning yourself against the success of your friends, you should develop something called the sympathetic joy that listed in the four Brahma Vihara, right? That we learn: the loving kindness, the compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. This is what the society needs the most at the moment, to accept and rejoice in someone's success instead of everything is me and mine. I have to be better than others. We will not be happy when we see someone success or better than us. Next one is called Maccharya. Maccharya translates to stinginess. Stinginess is the intention that I don't want to give, I just want to take. This is both delusion and both greed that drive that kind of behavior. We have a tendency to take more than give, but the Buddha teaches us to practice generosity. This is the antidote for Maccharya, softening the mind, tone down the Maccharya toward the giving. And there are three kinds of giving that the Buddha teaches, right? You can give the material things, give food, give clothes, give money. There's so many things that you can give. Second thing, you can give something called forgiveness. This is a little bit harder to practice, right? We should practice forgiveness, understand that no one is perfect. Mistake can be happening anytime. And in fact, mistake is a part of the game of life. The most important question is what to do next after you yourself make a mistake, or someone or your friends making a mistake to you. So we should develop the mind toward that way. The third thing that we can give is called the Dhamma, or the teaching. In other words, the gift of wisdom. The Buddha says the gift of wisdom surpasses all kind of gift, because when you give the wisdom, you can help others to have the right view, to live good life, to live virtuous life, teaching them how to observe precept, how to practice meditation, and how to develop wisdom toward the Dhamma studying. Next is called the Maya, usually translated to deceit or deception. The idea of Maya is dishonest. In front of your parents, you may pretend that you are study hard. After they left, you may turn yourself to the televisions to watch movie instead of study. In the office environments, if the boss is in the office, everyone in the office seems to be eagerly working on their job. No checking email, no reading newspapers. But when the boss leaves the office, then everyone turn themselves to do something else. They behave differently, checking email, watching television, chatting with their friends, and that's called Maya, that's called dishonest. Next one is called Sataya, usually translates to boastfulness. What is boastfulness? Boastfulness is the act or the practice of making excessive claims about one's own abilities or achievements. Basically, a person just want to promote himself of the good thing that he has done. He may do a little bit of good thing, but he make it such a big deal. And the reason a person doing that is because perhaps he wants to gain recognitions. He wants to be shine in the crowd, and he wants to be recognized, and he wants to be praised by people around him. This is another state in life that we should avoid. Our job is to continue doing good, whether someone see it or not, whether people know it or not. You know that you do good. and you can be proud of yourself, of the goodness that you do for yourself and you done for others. The next one is called false speech. This one we're familiar with. This is the precept number 4, right, in the 5 precepts, the musawada. And nobody likes someone to telling a lie, to speak the harsh words, speak the bad word. It doesn't bring peace and harmony into our life. So what we do, we observe the precept, right? Abstaining from false speech, abstaining from divisive speech, abstaining from harsh speech, and abstaining from the idle speech. The next one is called papicha. Papicha or evil wish. Evil wish usually come with the jealousy mind, right? When you see someone become rich or successful in life, so there are many ways to get rich, right? Can be done through the working hard or can be done through the corruption or cheating. And with the papicha or evil wish, a man who set intentions unwholesomely to regain their material wealth, and that person will definitely end up suffering. And how do we deal with papicha or evil wish when we see someone become rich or better than us, have a bigger house, have a new car? So we develop something called santosa or contentment. That's the antidote for the evil wish. And the last one is called micchaทิฏฐิ or wrong view, which we learn in the teaching of the Noble Eightfold Path. Micchaทิฏฐิ, this is what the Buddha said. There is no single factor so responsible for the suffering of a living being as a wrong view. Oppositely, there is no factor is so potent in promoting the good of living being as a right view. So this is the starting point of success and happiness. If a person has a wrong view, they start walk down the path of unwholesomeness. But if the person has the right view, that person, they start walking down the path of sustainable success and happiness. So what it mean by the wrong view and the right view? To understand wrong view, we need to understand the right view first, right? In the big picture, the right view that the Buddha would like us to understand is the right view towards something called the karma. There is a cause and consequence of our actions. He said, when a noble disciple or a wise followers understand what is karmically unwholesome and the root of unwholesome karma, what is karmically wholesome and the root of wholesome karma, then that person has the right view. So it's about karma, it's about consequence, right? So we can say, you do good, you get good. You reap what you sow. The good deeds bring good results, and the bad deeds always bring bad results. And that is the right view. So wrong view is oppositely, right? The person who have wrong view will neglect. The person who have wrong view will neglect the law of karma. And this is the antidote for each one of them. For anger, we can develop patience or khanti, loving kindness and compassion. For the depreciation or the makha, don't see the value or the worth of others, we should develop gratitude. And for the envy or jealousy mind or itsa, we can develop sympathetic joy. For the stinginess, the Buddha suggests us to practice generosity, the dana. The deception or the maya, you develop something called honesty. Don't become a dishonest person. Boastfulness or sataya, so we develop respect and humble. There's no need to show off the good thing that we have done. False speech, so we develop right speech, right? Develop something called truthfulness. And for the evil wish or papicha, we develop santosa or contentment. We content of who we are and what we have. And the last one, the wrong view or wrong understanding, one needs to develop the right view. So that's the idea of the mala, the Dhamma group 9. So now let's move on to the Dhamma group 10. So I will group them together of the 10 wholesome action and the 10 unwholesome action, which is akusala kamma. As we know, human being, we can commit kamma in 3 ways: through the thinking, through speech, and through bodily actions. The Buddha teaches us to stop doing bad, to continue doing good, and purify our mind through the meditation practice. And he specifically telling us what consider good and what consider bad. As you can see here, this column is called unwholesome action or akusala kamma. The second column is called wholesome action or kusala kamma. Through the bodily actions, by abstaining, killing or destroying life, abstaining from stealing or taking someone's stuff, and abstaining from sexual misconduct. For the verbalist actions, what considered unwholesome action is false speech or telling a lie, slanderous speech or impolite speech, divisive speech, breaking people into two groups, and idle chatter, speaking of something that unbeneficial. Wholesome verbally action is opposite, right? Abstaining from false speech, abstaining from harsh speech, abstaining from divisive speech, and abstaining from the idle chatter or the unbeneficial speech. And that's something we discussed earlier already. And for the mind part, this is about the thinking, right? What kind of thinking consider unwholesome thinking? First, covetousness, which drive by greed. We wish to have or obtain something in a wrong way. Second thing is called ill will. We learned about anger earlier. This is called unwholesome action because when someone getting angry, the mind is crowded. And with that crowded mind, a person can make a lot of mistake and can do a lot of bad things. And the third one is called wrong will, the will that rooted by ignorance. Oppositely, what consider the good thinking? The thinking of non-covetousness, develop contentment. If you want to get something, you obtain them not only legally but ethically as well. And the second thinking is about loving kindness and compassion. And that's what one should develop. Opposite to the wrong will is the right will, the will toward the law of karma, to see things the way they are. All of this is considered wholesome and unwholesome, the bad and the good in Buddhism taught by the Buddha himself. If we look into deeper, you may be seeing that according to the 5 precepts, this is the precept number 1, precept number 2, precept number 3, and precept number 4. So just by observing 5 precepts, you automatically create the wholesome karma or doing good things. Okay, so this is the 5 precepts: refraining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and false speech. And also that refraining from intoxicants, drug and alcohol that crowded the mind. So these are the 5 things. And how come the 5th precept doesn't appear here in the wholesome and unwholesome actions? Well, this teaching about alcohol is appear in another group of teaching, which is called abhayamukha, or the causes of destruction or ruin. Drinking alcohol is here, roaming the street at night, habitual partying, gambling, hang out with the bad friend or bad companions, and laziness. All of these, they consider the causes of destruction that one should avoid. So make sure you only commit the positive action or the kusala kamma or the wholesome action, because every action comes with consequence. By keeping the 5 precepts, we keep ourselves in the circle of wholesomeness. And why observing precept is so important? For the quick answers, in the dying moment of all beings, there will be the stage of mind called the life reviewing process. It happened very quickly. It's a life reviewing process. If your whole life only do good things, then the mind or the consciousness in that particular moment is joyful. And the good mind or the bright and clear mind usually go to the good place. Oppositely, if the mind catch on something unwholesome that a person did while he or she was still alive, like breaking some of these precepts, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and intoxicants. So these crowded the mind. And in that particular moment, as a person review his own action, the mind somehow clinging on or attached on the energy of the unwholesome action that he did. And that is scary, because the bright and pure mind will activate good consciousness, which leads a being to go to good place. With crowded mind, again, it will activate a negative consciousness, which definitely will lead the beings to go to the bad place after he die. And that's why we should make sure that we secure our precept for the rest of our life. So we come to the last topic today. It's called anusati. We get to know the meaning in a moment. In this teaching, the Buddha says, one thing, monks, when developed and cultivated, leads solely to what? This disillusionment, dispassion, cessation, peace, insight, awakening, and extinguishment. All of this point to something called nibbana. This is how the Buddha start off this particular sutra before he discussed about the anusati. By reflecting on this, whatever he's about to say or about to teach is definitely important. If we reflect into one of these, that will lead us to Nibbana. So the Anusati is the concept which one should often reflect. It helps lessen the mental impurity. It helps us to deal with defilements. It helps us to deal with hindrances when we meditate. It helps us to deal with hindrances when we meditate. It helps us to deal with defilements as we go through life. And that's, of course, will help us to regain the clarity state of the mind, no matter what kind of situation that we might be facing. So there is the word sati here, usually translate to mindfulness. Everyone seems to know that. Another meaning of sati is the remembering, right? Or bearing in mind. Anusati is the sati that we should continue to bearing in mind, continue to remind ourselves. And why do we have to remind ourselves to recall of these 10 things that we are about to discuss? Come back to this picture again. This is the nature of human mind. You may wake up happy, the mind is peace and calm, and when you go to work, the mind start to be bombarding with all kind of stimuli, positive, negative. Most of them are negative, and that's referred to the defilements or hindrances that keep coming back to the mind, cause the mind to be crowded and impure. So if one wants to be happy, one need to regain the clarity state of the mind to make sure the mind is pure and bright at all time by recall these 10 things that the Buddha teach. That's why the reflection 10 Anusati, it is very helpful and practical. What are the 10 of them? The first 3 we should familiar with because we learned about the triple gems already. The Buddhanusati, the Dhammanusati, and the Sankhanusati. The recollection, the virtue of the Buddha. The recollection, the virtue of the Dhamma. And the recollection of the virtue of the Sankha. This is the triple gems that we did learn in the Dhamma group 2. We seek refuge into these 3 gems because they are reliable. First is the Buddha. Imagine that if you allow the Buddha to sit into your mind, whatever you're about to do, you will be cautiously and mindfully to do the thing that you're about to do, right? Because the Buddha is sitting there and watching you. And that's called Buddhanusati. If someone starts to shout at you, and you have the Buddha sitting into your mind, when you're listening to that sound, that negative sound that go to your ear and go to the mind, with mindfulness, you know that, hey, I should remain calm, I should remain the wholesome state of the mind because the Buddha is sitting here. So it gives you a peace of mind. Instead of saying something bad to them, you can remain calm. And that's the idea of Buddhanusati. And the Dhammanusati as well. What is the Dhamma? The Dhamma is the teaching of the Buddha, right? The teaching of the Buddha that help us to live good life, that help us to be happy. In many situations in life, we must apply the proper Dhamma, then we can overcome that situation or that suffering that we are facing. That is why everyone is encouraged to study, to continue to study Dhamma, to acquire this kind of wisdom. With mindfulness and wisdom, one always make a better decision. And the third one, to recall the virtue of the Sangha. When you think of your meditation master, your Dhamma teacher, or the monk that you have faith with, whether you know them personally or not, if you allow them to be in your mind, again, similar to you allow the Buddha to sit into your mind, you will do things mindfully and consciously. And most likely you will not break precept in the action that you're about to do. And this is the benefit of recall the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha into your mind often during the day. Number 4 is called Sila Nusati, the recollection of one's own ethical conduct. Like I said, Buddhist people observe 5 precepts, sometimes 8 precepts. If you think of your own action, that you have been observing precepts for many years, when you look back, there is no regret, no remorse, no guilt of your own action. I never kill, I never steal someone's stuff. I honest to my spouse, I don't telling a lie, and I also practice mindfulness by not getting involved in alcohol and drug. By recall this Sila Nusati or recall the virtues of your behavior, it brings your mind peace and joy during the day. And that's the beauty of Sila Nusati. And the next one is called Jaka Nusati, mean the recollection of the generosity. What is generosity? You think of the giving that you have done in your whole life. In the framework of the teaching of the Buddha for the lay people, sometimes he starts from the dana. Dana is giving, and then the sila, virtuous conduct, and then the bhavana, or the practice of meditation. Dana is the starting point. It's easy to do. But precept a little bit more challenges, right? To observe precept, to remind yourself not to kill, to lie, not to sexual misconduct, or having involved in the alcohol and drug. That we need more effort to do that, to control our behavior, to be wholesome. But the dana is easy to do. You have something you can give, right? We learned today you can give material things, you can give forgiveness, you can give the wisdom to someone that you love, to people around you. Here, there are villages nearby the monastery that I stay, and we go arms round often, and we notice that even though people don't have a lot to give, but they still practice the generosity. They still give out of their faith to the monks. They're offering food to the monks, they're offering robe to the monks, they're offering medicine to the monks. And when they close their eye and recall that I have been giving food to the monk, I have been serving the communities, with that giving, that positive energy will come back and bring the mind of the person joyful. And that's called Jaka Nusati. Next one is called Devata Nusati, or the Deva. Okay, the Deva is the heavenly beings. There is the Buddhist cosmology that the Buddha talked about the realm of existence. There's something called life after death, heaven and hell. This teaching also exists in the teaching of the Buddha as well. So the Deva is the heavenly beings. One recollect on the virtue which make one become a Deva. And that helps the person to be mindful because they're aware of the law of karma. The sad truth is all of us, we die anyway. Doesn't matter how long can we live, but at the end, we die anyway. The body will go through the decay process. Sometime in the future, the body will stop function and death will come. And when death comes, there's something called the spontaneous rising. The rebirth happening right away. There's no gap between one life to another life. Even though we cannot realize Nibbana in this lifetime, we know that there is something called life after death. We should make sure that we born in happy realms, the realm of Deva. So what would be the virtue that secure the path to reborn in happy realms? We learned that already. These two virtues will lead ones to reborn in a heavenly beings. First is called Hiri, or the moral shame. Second is called Ottappa, or the moral fear. Hiri is a moral shame which drives by the internal factor. I don't want to do bad whether in public or in private because I'm a good man. I recognize my own virtue and my own worth, so I will not do something bad. My parents never teach me to steal someone's stuff. So no matter someone see it or not, for the rest of my life, I will not steal someone's stuff. And that's the idea of the hiri. It's come from the internal factor. But ottappa drive by the external factor because of the law, the state law, because of the law of karma. There is a consequence when someone do something bad. And because we understand that consequence, so we don't do the bad things. If we kill, we lie, we sexual misconduct, and that's crowded the mind, and the life after death doesn't look good. And because of understand this consequence, a person don't do something bad. If we can secure this virtue for the rest of our life, our precept will automatically be pure because the mind is mindful and in wholesome state before he take action physically and verbally. And that's called Devata Nusati. Next one is called Marana Nusati, the mindfulness of death. What is the mindfulness of death? The Marana Nusati, Marana means death. We were born somewhere in life and then we go through life and sometime in the future at the point B, death will come. But the benefit of us reflecting on death, this is the true nature of life and it's unavoidable to face death. Our job is not to fear, not to be nervous about death. Our job is to acknowledge the real nature of life. So we need to prepare. As a human being, we always facing challenges in life. There are all kinds of suffering that's happening, like physical illness, relationship, health, business issues, political issues, environmental issues. Life is filled with these kind of problems. If you feel like life hitting you hard, maybe you lost your job, maybe you are diagnosed as a fatal disease, maybe your heart is broken. When all of this happens, maybe someone do something bad to you, at the end of the day, we should find a way to let go that worry, that suffering that we are facing. And one way to do that is to reflect on the death. Because when we reflect on the death, it helps the mind to be at ease. It helps to regain the wholesome state of the mind. As long as we're still alive, we can do something about the problem that we are facing, right? Because when death comes, then everything stops. By reflection on that, it helps the mind to be at ease. It helps the mind to let go all kind of problem. Tonight, I deserve to go back and sleep in peace. So I'm gonna forgive. I'm gonna relax. I'm gonna let go at least temporarily. Tomorrow, I will resume to this problem again. And sometimes reflecting on that, it helps us not to take things too personal, not to take things too seriously. What's the big deal if the guy says something bad to me? What's the big deal if someone cut off my lane? What's the big deal if I don't get the food that I ordered? Right? So if we don't personalize into that thing, if we don't identify ourselves to that situation too much, it helps the mind to be relaxed, and we can continue to do things that we're supposed to be doing calmly. The next one is called Kaya Kata Sati. The Kaya Kata Sati, the mindfulness of the body or the nature of the physical bodies. This is very helpful for a person who have a lustful mind. When we reflect on the body, the Kaya Kata Sati or Asubha, the Buddha suggests us to bearing in mind, to recollect into the true nature of your own physical body. And when a man meditates with a lustful mind, the mind cannot come back and be still. So he can develop the Kaya Kata Sati by turning his attention into his own physical body, reflect on each part of the body. So the body is loathsome, the body is ugly, the body composed of the 32 parts like this. About human anatomy: head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin. In the ordination process, the preceptor would teach these 5 meditation objects to the new ordinance. He would say, Kesa loma nakha tanta tajo, tajo tanta nakha loma kesa, to reflect on the head hair, body hair, nail, teeth, skin, back and forth, back and forth. Why did he say that? Why did he teach something like this to the new monks? Because the new monk is the monk who just come from the lay life and wants to be a monk. Then the monk is the person who stands opposite to the realm of sense pleasure. He seeks for a more refined form of happiness through his meditation practice. And when he sits, the mind will go everywhere in this universe. The mind will go back home, go back to human animal object that he had experienced before he became a monk. By reflection on this body part, it turns the attention of the mind back inwardly to reflect that, hey, nothing is beautiful. The body is loathsomeness, the body is filled with disease. Head hair from black hair turn to gray hair, from beautiful skin turn to wrinkle. So all of this is the nature of the body, which is impermanent and unsustainable. And this is the beauty of the Kaya Kata Sati when the mind has a lot of lust. Next one is called Anapanasati, which we may familiar with, the mindfulness of the breathing. This is probably the easiest way to bring the mind back to the body, to the present moment. And you can do this all day long. That's why it's called Anusati, to recollect often, to recollect continuously. When you get on the bus going to work, instead of checking your phone, just bring the mind back to the breath. Enjoy the moments. And when you get on the elevator, when you wait in line at the restaurant, instead of let the mind wandering wherever it wants to be, habituate the mind to come back to the breath. And when the mind come back to the breath, the mind at least nearby the body. And eventually the mind will go back inside the body. And that helps the mind to stay still inside the body and observe things that happening around you fully. That's the beauty of Anapanasati. And there are many ways to practice Anapanasati as well. You may start with something that's easy for you. You can bring the mind back to the breath and just observe how the body breathes. Breathe in short or long, breathe out short or long. When you breathe in short, how do you feel? When you breathe out short, how do you feel? When you breathe in long, how do you feel? When you breathe out long, how do you feel? By doing this, you're playing with your mind, you habituate the mind to be at the present moment, utilizing the breath. And the last one is called Upasamanusati, the recollection of the virtue of Nibbana. This is a little bit advanced. If someone who never realized Nibbana, we may not know the virtue of the Dhamma fully. For those Arahant or those noble disciples of the Buddha, they have that direct experience with Nibbana, so they will appreciate the virtue of Nibbana. For us as the regular human beings, how can we apply this into practice? How can we recollect the virtue of Nibbana? Because we never have the direct experience of something called Nibbana ourselves. We may be thinking of Nibbana as the ultimate happiness, the state of mind where the mind is completely free from greed, hatred, and delusions. The mind is in the purest state. And when that happens, a person has realized Nibbana. For us, we can recall the virtue of Nibbana through studying the Dhamma. There are many sutras that describe Nibbana characteristic, that describe the benefits of someone realizing Nibbana. By continue to reflect on this kind of teaching, this kind of Dhamma that related to Nibbana, it helps the mind to be calm and joyful. It gives us confidence that we are walking on the right. And one day, if we don't give up, if we keep continue to walk down this noble eightfold path, one day we can realize Nibbana as well, just like the Buddha and the great monk in the past. So these are the 10 anusati that the Buddha suggests everyone to reflect often during the day. You can reflect one of these or the combination of them, whichever one that works for you in that particular situation. You can think of the Buddha, think of the Dhamma, think of the Sangha, the monk that you have faith with, think of your own behavior or the sila, think of your generosity, the goodness that you have done for others, or think of the virtue that make a person to become heavenly beings. Sometimes you can think of the Morana Nusati, think reflection on death from time to time. It helps us to regain consciousness more effectively. Or when the mind have lost a lot, we may reflect on the loathsomeness of the body, utilize the Kaya Kata Sati. Or you just want to keep it simple during the day when you are mindful, bring the mind back to the breath. Allow the mind to be at the present moment. And later on, find time to study more advanced Dhamma. It helps us to understand the concept of Nibbana. It helps us to have confidence that one day we can realize Nibbana as well. So that's all the Dhamma topic of today's lecture, which covering the concept of mala or the 9 stains that hinder us from making progress in our life. And we did talk about the wholesome and unwholesome action taught by the Buddha, or the good and the bad in Buddhism. And the last one, we discussed the 10 anusati, something that strongly suggests for us to practice on a day-to-day basis. So let's pay respect to the triple gems and then we take a break.